Okay, good evening. Even though we're up to Mem Zayin, Daf Mem Zayin, I'd like to go back. I found something very, very fascinating, and I want to share it with you. I found the Shalos and Shuvas Chasam Seifa, and I want to share it with you. It's on a Taisus Mem Hey Amin Aleph, fellas. Look at Mem Hey Amin Aleph at that Mishnah. So we said there were three things in the pasuk: the mountains, the hills, and the trees. So we said the mountain is what's on the mountain is asa. The mountain itself is not, but the hill is asa. What's on the hill is asa. The hill itself is not. But when it came to the tree, we said that's not true. So what do you use the tree for? So says the Mishnah at the end, Kol makom she'atam moitzah gevaya v'giva nasa. If you find a large mountain, if you find a lifted hill, v'eitz ranon and a fresh green tree, da. Says Rabbi Akiva, this is a siman sheyesh sham avodas kechavim. Good, right? That's we know. Look at little Taisus, guys. Kol makom she'atam moitzah har gevaya. That says Taisus, b'Yerushalmi parech mi beis habechira. If every place was a makom of avodah zarah, how is it possible to build a Beis Hamikdash on Har Moriah? If every place was an avodah zarah, how is it possible to build the Beis Hamikdash in Har Moriah? Umasik, says the Yerushalmi, al pi navi nivna sham. Through the navi, it was built there. That's what the Yerushalmi says. Right? Moshe. Okay. You know, 1 second. Okay, this is a Shalos and Shuvach Sam Seifa, Chelik Beis Yaredeya, Simin Reish Lamed Gimel, Dibra Maskal, Einav Hamudulachim. So maybe the Farish is the Rebbe Yerushalmi. B'Shem says the Chasam Seifa, I'm going to come explain the words of Yerushalmi that we just saw. B'Shem Moro HaChosid Shebekahuna, Reb Nosson Adla. This is written in third person by Reb Milcha Zilba. Because his Rebbe was Reb Nosson Adla, Zechet Tzadik Livracha, Al Pi HaMedrash, Al HaPosik, Bayar Es HaMokam Erachik. By the Akedah it says he saw the place from afar. Shera Oisei Mokam Amok. What did Avram Avinu see? He saw a Mokam that was Amok, that was deep. He saw a valley, V'loi Har, and not a mountain. V'Spalel, and Avram Avinu Davin, V'Amar, Ein Kvoidei Shel Melech Lishkoin Ba'emek. It's not the covet of a Melech to reside in a valley. V'Naseh B'Oisa Hayom Har. And you know what happened as a result of Avram's tefillah? That mountain, that valley became a mountain. V'Alzeh Nemar, Asher Ye'omar Hayoim Bahar Hashem Yireh. Kloimar, Sheba'oisa Yoim Naseh Har. Avram called that place Hashem Yireh. That place that was seen as a mountain. Until then, it wasn't a mountain, but then it became a mountain. Well, if he's mefarish, based upon this medrash, she'omnam kol hahorim she'emidu aleim avodah zarah, all the places that they went ahead and they put avodah zarah on, ve'avdu oisam lefnei shehichzik Avram Avinu alav hashalom baretz. This took place all before Avram Avinu was given Eretz Yisrael. So Haim Nesru L'Gavaya. As a result, they are asa to use L'Gavaya, in this case the Beis Hamikdash. Aval Har Moriah Haya Emek. Har Moriah wasn't a mountain. Har Moriah was a valley. At Osa Shah, until that time, when Avram Avinu davened, and they never put an avodah zarah on it. Ad Acha Shenasu Har, until after it became a mountain. Al Yidei Tefilasa Shel Avram Avinu Alav Shalom. At that period in time, the land was given to him. So even if the Goyim did avodah zarah afterwards, they can't answer it because it belonged to Avram Avinu. Guys, is this Kaladik? Kaladik. V'David HaMelech Yoda, she efshel libno says Beis Hamikdash al makom shahaya mitchilasei har kiven she'en lecha har gavoya shloi avdu alav avodah zarah. And David HaMelech knew that he couldn't build the Beis HaMikdash on a place that had a high mountain because Avodah Zorah had been on it. Umeidach, and the other side of the coin, ain't Kvaida Shel Melech Lishkain Be'emek. It's not the derech of a melech to live in the valley. Al Kain Omar, in Etain Shnas La'enai, right? You'll give sleep to my eyes. He kept on looking for it. Ad Emsa Mokaim LaHashem, that until he found the place of Hashem. I think there's a medrash that when he ran away from Shaul, he came to Ramah, he came to Shmuel, and they were Isaac trying to find the place, the Makom of the Migdash. Then so he davened, they stayed up the whole night till they found it. That it should be appropriate for what? For the place of Abba Yaakov. He found something that initially was a place. Kloimar, Bika Shvela, a low valley. This place was called Mokaim, a low valley. And then it became a mountain. And he needed a Navi to reveal this mountain. The Mokaim Betchila, Vinasa Harachakach. B'tzarchi al Dvarov, asked Rabbi Michal Zilba, Shari B'Gemara L'Kamon Mavur, Shalachei Nesru Kol Hasheros, Afa Pishein Adam Moised Davar Shein Shaloi. The Hasheros were usher, even though a person can't ask for something that doesn't belong to him. They Yisrael Kishavru LeEgel, when they served the Egel, Gilu Daitam, they revealed Shenoich Lehem Avodah Zorah. They were happy about Avodah Zorah. Vayidei Nesru Kol Hasheros. Then Cain Hayahar Zeh Im Hoya Nevad Afilu Achkach Hoya Lesar. Since they were Megala that they were happy with Avodah Zorah, it should have asked that place as well after the Egel. But until the kasha of Michal Silba's Ha'ara, you have a Pelitic, a Medrash to explain a very, very difficult inyan, right? How in the world could they build a Beis HaMikdash if every place was a Makam Har Gavoya? Rabbi Kiva was giving a simon that every single place was a place that they served Avodah Zorah. So it's a beautiful, beautiful Medrash that it was first initially it was a valley, and they obviously didn't serve as Avodah Zarah, and then it was given to Avram Avinu, it became a har, and it belonged to him, and therefore he can't answer it. And you have the kasha Reb Michal Zilba, but L'chal Apachas, you have Shalos and Shuvas, Sam Seifa, in Yeridea, Chelik Beis, Reish Lamed Gimel, quoting his holy Rebbe, Reb Nassan Adler. Very geschmack. Okay, let's begin today's daf. So we're on Mem Vav Amid Beis, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that's 8 lines up. Boy, Ramachama is going to ask a few kashas. So we saw that if you serve as an avodah zarah, an inanimate object, let's say that's a balchai, it doesn't become asa. The raya was that what you needed a pasuk to ask it as a carbon. So since you needed a pasuk to ask it as a carbon, it's not a raya that what as hedyet it's okay. Heads it's okay. We had a limud yesterday about mechuber. Right, we had a limud yesterday by Mechober that anything that's connected, we had from Esnan, we had Rav's limud that it's asa, that even Esnan would be asa, and anything that was Mechober yesh. In other words, just like an animal, if you serve it as a avodah zarah, is asa legavoya. Hu adin Mechober, something attached to the ground. If you serve it, is asa legavoya. We had that limud yesterday. We had the kash, the pircha, but it remained. Says the Gemara, boy Rami Barchama, Hamistachim lekama schitim. You go ahead and you're mishtachaveh to a standing grain. You have chitim. It's a stalk of wheat, and the question is mahu lemenachas. Now it itself you can't asa, it's mechuber to the ground, and for a hedyet it will be permitted. But what about lemenachas? You know the menachas are bought from wheat. Is just like an animal that's loose. If you're nevad, it's mutter lehedyet, but it's also legavaya. What would the din be by chitim? If you go ahead and you serve chitim, right, and it's mechuber, and therefore it's going to be mutter lehedyet. What's the din vis-a-vis what menachos? Yesh shinui ben nevad, or ain't shinui ben nevad. In other words, what are you going to do to make the carbon mincha? You're going to cut it and you're going to grind it. So once you cut it and grind it, you have a shinu, you have a change. So do you say there's a change when it comes to nevad, or don't you say there's a change when it comes what the nevad? That's the Gemara Shaila. So Amar Zucha B'Reid Rav Nachman Toshma Kol HaSurim Legabe Mizbeach. Anything that's usher to the Mizbeach Vladoiseyem mutarim. The vladois amuta. Vitoni Allah, Rebbe Eliezer Isa. Right? And we learned on that Rebbe Eliezer says it's asa. Says Rashi, Kol Isurim, 4 lines from the bottom, going muktzah minevad, an animal that was set aside for Avodah Zorah, or an animal that was served as an Avodah Zorah. Rebbe Eliezer Isa, because Salkedaita Chashta, the Vehema Mu Beres Sherova or Yishtachava La Askinan. We're dealing with an animal that an act of znus was done to the animal, or you bow down to the animal. And now it gives birth. Ubiyesh shinui b'nevad kamiflagi. And the shaila is whether that the baby born, whether it can be a carbon or not, whether it's I guess mutta b'hano or not. What is the shaila of yesh shinui b'nevad or not? Whether it can be brought as a carbon. If you hold yesh shinui b'nevad, then what? You could bring it. So that's, and Rebbe Eliezer says it's asa. So pashtus, that's the machlokes between the two. The Tanakama Sava yesh shinui b'nevad. Hilkach v'ader say mutarim v'adei de mutta. The meikara initially uba. It was a fetus. V'hashta behema. Now it's a full-fledged animal. So that's a shinui. Rebbe Eliezer Sava ain't shinui b'nevad. So alma pluktehi. So the answer to Rami Bar Chomish Shaila, whether yesh shinui, whether yesh shinui b'nevad or not, is in fact the machlokes tanoim. Tanakama says yesh shinui, and Rebbe Eliezer says ain't shinui. On that, the Gemara comments back in the Gemara. V'lavitmar Allah, Rav Nachman, Rabbi Baravua, machlokes is mishenirvu ulbeseif ibru. Okay, so in other words, the Havamina was, fellas, that the animal was pregnant at the time of either the act of znus or the act of bowing down. And now we're saying, no, that's not pshat. Again, anytime Rashi says kasal kedaitach, you have to see how it changes, right? So here's the change. It's speaking about you did the Aveira and then it got pregnant. U'leseif ibrug. Aval ibru u'leseif nirva'u. But if it was pregnant and then an act of snus was done to it, divriyah kol asurim, everyone would hold what? It's asa. Everyone would hold it's asa. Let's see the Rashi in the bottom of the page. V'lav miyit marlo amar rabbi Menachem machlokes b'shenirvu b'leseif ibru. Uktim farish b'tamura. The Tanakama Sava zev zeh goyrim muta. There's a sub okay, fellas, outside. This animal at the time of the act of znus, right, became asa for the mizbeach. It then consequently got pregnant. What's the tzad to say it's muta? Zev zeh goyrim. You have two factors over here. You have the factor of the mother and the father. So if you hold zev zeh goyim is muta, the animal, the baby is muta. If you hold zev zeh goyim is asa, you're asa. But it has nothing to do with yesh shinui nevad or not, because we're not discussing that at all. Why? Because if it was pregnant at the time, and l'chayra at the time of the znus, everyone would hold it's asa, right? Top Rashi, tehi vlada nirvau, because it's like the vlad itself had an act of znus done to it. V'gavei never nami he vlada nevdu, and even if you served it as an avodah zarah, it's like you served the vlad. V'asurim, it's like uber yerachimah, right? Like uber is considered part of the mother. V'afagav the chazav v'nishtana, and even though there's a shinui when it's born, ain't shinui b'nevad lahitzim isur. There's no shinui b'nevad lahitzim isur. So in other words, you wanted to say, fellas, that yesh shinui b'nevad is a machlokes, and we're saying no, it's not a machlokes. It's ain't shinui b'nevad. Right? There's no shinui b'nevad. The whole machlokes is when it wasn't pregnant. If it was pregnant, everyone would hold, even though there's a shinui that it went from an uber to a baby, to a born, right? Nonetheless, it would be asa. And no one disagrees, so we push it to Shiloh of Rami Bar Chama that ain't shinui b'nevad. Okay? Aval ibru l'seif nirvu divriyah kol asurim. V'hachanami ki ibru l'seif nirvu dami. And here as well, like I guess here by the menachos, right? By the menachos, it's like what? A case of nirvu. Ki ivdu l'seif nirvu. It was pregnant and l'seif. How is that like? How is that menachos? How is that like menachos? I never liked when I thought I knew the Gemara. Yeah. Okay. I guess when it was before, it was, let's view it as when it's a standing grain, it was like the baby. And then when you went ahead and ground it into flour, it's like born. So therefore, let's be poished that what, just like a baby ain't shinoi and you couldn't bring this a carbon, who adin linyan mincha, you would not be able to bring this. Who adin mincha, you would not be able to bring this. Let's be poished the shaila. That's one way. That's one way to look at it. Okay. Ikadi amri, that those who are poished the isar from the words of the Mishnah. In other words, you're going to arrive at the same place but a different way. Machlokes b'shenirvu b'sleif ibru. Machlokes is taka what? Kishenirvu, when it was right. It was raveya and then it was ibru. That's the machlokes. Abel ibru b'sleif nirvu diver kol asa. Everyone would say it's asa. V'chanami kiru b'sleif nirvu dami. And here by mincha it's the same thing. We'll view it as what? As if it's pregnant, and then when it gets ground into grain. Now the Gemara says, how can you compare a mincha to the baby? How can you compare it? Fellas, I can tell you the baby is not a shinoi, but mincha is a shinoi. Hachi hashta. Hasam meikara behema, v'hashta behema. And dashahu the achse ba'anpa. When the animal's pregnant, it's pregnant with a baby animal. And when the animal's born, it's the same animal that was inside. In other words, the door, meaning the closing of the oisei makom, is what stops you from seeing it. But there's no shinoi. There's no shinoi. So that it's asa is not because ain't shinoi. That it's asa is because it's the same animal. But by menachis, where you took grain and ground it up, and clearly there was a whole watch shinoi done over there, efshe yesh shinoi. So in other words, you want to be poishet mincha from what? From animal, you can't be poishet because an animal is not a shinoi, right? Therefore, an animal is not a shinoi. Rashi says, deshahu da achse ba'apa, right? Dal se arechem hayasoygim b'fanav. It's the delis of the rechem that was in front of it. So you can't be poishet the shaila. Guys, you good? A very long shadav coming up. So the shaila of Rami Bar Chama was the shaila of what? Of Yeshina Nevada Ancient Nevan. Boy Reish Lakish. Hamishtachavel Dekel. You bow down to a tree. Now the tree's asa. Lulavoi Mahu. The mitzvah. Could you use the lulav? The Elah now, okay? So guys, we're doing a similar type of limud. In other words, just like le'inyan dava gavoya, a higher calling, even if an animal is mutter b'hana. But when it comes to Hashem, we won't accept the animal. What about a lulav? And you have a tree, you down the tree, and the tree doesn't become asa. What's the din of the lulav? Using that, will we view the mitzvah of lulav similar to what? To kachim. Right? We'll view that similar to kachim. So just like that tree is not going to hashta, boy reish lakish. If it's an elan that was gone ahead and it was planted as an ashera, right? It's not a shaila. That feel the head nami asa, because even for the head you'd also be asa. You planted it, right? And then you served it, and then it's machlokes between Yehuda and the Tanakama. I'll leave it there. Yehuda like tibayilach. I feel the head nami asa. Again, Rabbi Yehuda was of the opinion that if you planted it not for avodah zarah and then you served it as avodah zarah, it's asa. So who adin the lulav would be asa. Ki tibayilach. I'll leave it there. Rabbanan. Le'inyan mitzvah mai. How le'inyan mitzvah? What's the din? Now, guys. So leite chachamim, fellas. Let's go through it. Leite chachamim. You planted a tree not for avodah zarah. Then you served it as avodah zarah. What's the halacha? Mutter. What's the halacha of the lulav of that tree? What's the halacha lulav? Now the Gemara fears and says the shaila. Mi moyes klape gavaya. Do we view it as something as disgusting vis-a-vis what? The mitzvah of lulav? I lie. Or don't we? That's the shaila. Now again, like Rabbi Yehuda is not a shaila because he holds the tree is asa. Of course the lulav's asa. But like the chacham that it's mutter, what's the din? Kiyasa Rav Dimi. Rav Dimi came from Bavel. Amar be'ashera shebitlu kami boile. The shaila was what? An ashera that you mevatel. The shaila is an ashera that you. Now this was an ashera. It was asa to a hedyet. Came along a guy and was mevatel it. Okay, so now, when this tree was asa, could you use the lulav? Guys, when this tree was an ashera, can you use the lulav? What's your proof? What does the third parak say of Masechta Sukkah? Lulav agazav yovish pasol shel ashera v'shel nedachas pasol. Why? Ketute michta shiura. You don't have a shear, right? It's also, it's like it's not there. So again, here's the shaila. This was an ashera. It's out of the ballpark. You can't use it. What happens now is mevatel it. Now it's back in the ballpark. Yeah? Do we say yesh tichui eitzel mitzvus or not? By kachim, fellas, we say yesh tichui by kachim. By kachim, we say yesh tichui, again, by, you have the two seirim of Yom Kippur, one of them dies, you have to bring another one, because you can't, you have to do another gyro, because the other one's out of the ballpark, you need them both. So there's yesh tichui what? By kachim. The shaila is by mitzvahs is the tichui. When this tree was an Asherah, it was out of the ballpark. There's no way you could use this lulav. But now you mevatel it. Now it's back in the ballpark. Could you use it or not? That's the shaila. Yesh tichui eitzel mitzvah or not? That's the shaila. Okay? Yesh tichui mitzvah. Now tifshalei, let's be paishid, mititnan, from a Mishnah in Masechta Chulin, in Perakisi Adam. If you shecht a bird or a chaya, you have to cover the blood. So kiseu, let's say you covered the blood, viniskala, and then it became revealed again, and the blood is uncovered. Patim elachasais. You did the mitzvah already, you don't have to do it again. This is what we need. Kiseu ruach, if the wind covers it, chayiv lachasais. Right. V'amar Rabbi Rav Chana, Amar Rabbi Yechanan, lo shanu that you chayiv to cover it, el shechazim viniskala. Only if it became what? Open again. Aval lo chazim viniskala patim elachasais. But if it wasn't what, it wasn't. In other words, let's say the wind came along, took the dust, the offer, blew it on the blood, you potter. Comes along the wind and uncovers it, you chayiv. Now here's the question. Why should you be chayiv? Why should you be chayiv? When it was covered, the mitzvah was done already. It was out of the ballpark when it was covered. So now that is becoming uncovered, you're going to say what? You have to cover it again? Now you see that what? That ain't duche etz mitzvah. You have to do the mitzvah again. So let's be patient from there. Tifshalem. V'amar Rabbi Yochanan, lo shanu el shechazim niskala. Aval lo chazim niskala patim elchasais. V'avinam ba ki chazim niskala mai have. Hayil v'itchi itchi. Once it's out, it's out. V'amar Rav Papa zoyse meris ain't duche etz mitzvahs. Right? You see that what? Late Rav Papa, there's no duche by a mitzvah. So we can be patient the shaila. That if the Asherah was bottled, you could use the lulav from the Asherah. Rav Papa says the Gemara, no, Rav Papa Gufi Boile. Nifsha Pshitle Rav Papa de Ein Dichayetz Mitzvahs. Loishna Lekula. No difference, Lekula. The Kula would be the Kula by the Asherah, that it's bottled. Loishna Lechumra by Kisi Adam, that you have to do the mitzvah. Again, the cool is that you don't have to do the mitzvah, and the chum is you have to do the mitzvah. By the Asherah, guys, it's a kula if you're going to say dichui, right? That you won't be able to, you won't have a lulav. Over here, you're going to have a chumrah that you'd have to do it. Good, you'd have to do it. Or maybe he's in doubt. L'chumrah amrinon, l'chumrah by kisi adam will say it, but l'kula to say that you're chayiv in a lulav lay amrinon, and the Gemara answers teku. The Gemara bleibt schwer. Again, very, very, very interesting shaila. The shaila of dichui, how do you view it? And the shaila was, if you have an asherah, you mevatel the asherah. Since it was out of the ballpark, does it come back in the ballpark or not? And it remains a shaila. It remains teku. Boira papa, hamishtachvel behema, you bow down to an animal. Okay, so what's the din? Is the animal mutter, guys? Absolutely. Animal's mutter, right? What can't you do with the animal? Can't bring it as a carbon. Simra, it's wool. Mahu l'tchelis. Now, could you use it for tchelis? Now, tchelis demai. Eat tchelis l'kahanim. If it's tchelis for the kahanim, for the beggar of the kohen, hainu boy the roim barchama. That's the shaila of roim barchama that we saw yesterday. That you bow down to a brick. You bow down to an evan. Could you use it for the mizbeach or not? Right? You bow down to an evan. Could you use it for the mizbeach or not? So it's the same thing over here. You bow down to what an animal. Could you use it for them for that? We're viewing the begodim of the kohanim for the avodah similar to mizbeach as machshirei carbon. Right? If a kohen doesn't wear the begodim, he can't do the avodah. So it's as important to the carbon as the mizbeach is. In other words, you can't do without the clothing. So it'd be very geschmack. So what's Rav Papa Shaila? If that's a Shaila, Reish Lakish already asked that Shaila. Rami Bar Chama already asked that Shaila, right? V'it chelis l'tzitzis, and now let's say it's not speaking about the Avodah. It's speaking about the mitzvah tzitzis. Hainu bari the Reish Lakish. That's a Shaila by the Asherah and the Lulav. In other words, what is Rav Papa asking? Memanushach, it's been asked vis-a-vis the Avodah. It was asked by Rami Bar Chama. Vis-a-vis mitzvahs, it was asked by Reish Lakish. Says Meinachanam, you're right. The loy humi boile, that's not the shaila. But how do come boile? Here's the shaila. Mishum the ikka mili achrinasa simra mahulet cheles, right? Since they're going to ask another shaila, they asked about semra for tcheles. Karna mahul lechatzoitzos. Let's say you have an animal that was served as an avodah zarah, and you needed the horn for the chatzoitzos. Rashi says the karbanis. Very meduyi, guys. There's two chatzoitzos. There's chatzoitzos made of silver. That was called, to bring the people together. It was used for other reasons. And then there's the chatzoitzos that were blown by the Levium, for the karbonis. So Rashi says karbonis to avoid the shaila. Tosfos asked the kasha, Rashi gave that teretz. So you have an animal that was served as an avodah zarah. Can you use the horn for chatzoitzos? Shoikeha ma'u lechalilim. The bone, the shank bone, could you use it for a flute? B'nei meyeha, the kishkes, ma'u leparos. Could you use it for the harp, the strings of the harp? So that's the shaila. Now I'll leave them on the Yama Ikashira B'Kli. There's a machlokes whether when the Levium, when the Shira, what was the Ikashira? Was the Ikashira B'Pleh or the Ikashira was the instrument? Lamanda Amar Ikashira B'Kli Loiti Boilach the Vade Yasa, Vade Biyasa, right? Because it would be Dava Moyas to go ahead and use an animal that was never for Avodah Zarah to use for the instruments played by the Levium, which were the shear that was accompanied the carbon tamid. It's only to enhance the voice, and therefore what you could use it. Nonetheless, it's still not such a geschmacka thing, and therefore what teku, you would say what it remains shver. Guys, geschmacka shalos, right? Very, very geschmacka gemara. Boy Rabbi. Hamishtachavel l'ma'ayin. A person bows down to a ma'ayin, a fountain. And the fountain is flowing water. Meim of mouth. What's the din? The nesachim. We know that the nesachim, they used it for on Purim, not Purim, it's Sukkot. They used the nesachim of water. Could you go ahead and use this? It was served. Now, what's the shaila? Now, my kami boile. Ilema libebua kasagid. If he bowed down to his reflection, right? And therefore, what the water still remains mutter. Idilma lemaya kasagid, right? And and maybe he's bowing down to the water. Okay, if that's the case, he's bowing down to the water. Why did you learn the shaila by a fountain for tiboyloch safa lehedit? Go ahead and just a regular basin of water. If you want to know the halacha of whether water is us or not, why do you have to zetzenai by a fountain? Why don't you just zetzenai by a basin of water? So lo'ilam lemaya kosagid. He's not bowing down to his bua. He's not bowing down to his reflection. He's bowing down to the water. So l'chora, why did you learn it by a case of a fountain rather than by a basin? V'hachi kami boile. Lemaya dekame kosagid. He bowed down to the water that was what? That was in front of him. The kamei kami ozdoi. And that's not there anymore because it's a fountain and it flowed. Oidilma the deburner demaya kosagid. He was bowing down to the flow of the water, the current of the water. Right? And therefore it will be us. So that's the shaila. That's why you learn the case of Ma'ayin. Fred Gemara, umi mitzri. It would be aser. V'am Rabbi Yochanan Mishuv Rav Shimon Yetzadik. Mayim shel Rabim ein esarim. Mayim shel Rabim you can't aser. So l'chayr in the Havmina the Gemara was speaking about a public mayan. So even if he bowed down, fellas, to the whole current, he can't aser it because as we already know, ein adam asa dovish ein shaloi. Right, a person can't aser something that doesn't belong to him. On that, the Gemara's answer is the kanavi ma'ara. It's in his land. It's in his land, and therefore the shiler is it belongs to him. Is he bowing down to that water or bowing down to the stream? And therefore that's the shiler. Okay, a few mishnayos now. He had a wall and it was next to the house of an avodah zarah. And l'chayra, the house itself was served as an avodah zarah. It's not pshat, there was an avodah zarah in the house. The house itself was an avodah zarah. Rashi says, "V'bayis atzmai neva." The bayis itself was served. So if enough on it falls down, asla b'noisai, right? It's asla to build. Why? Because you're building a wall for an avodah zarah. Ketzad yasa, what should you do? Kainis b'toich shaloi arba amis. Recess the wall that was there into your property for amis. Ubayna shaloi, and build yours. That's what you do. Bring it in for amis and build it. Okay. Let's say the gersa over here. Let's say the area, the wall, the area was belonged to you and the guy. Let's say it belonged to both. Then neither merza al merza. Rashi, neither merza al merza. That cheshbon, it doesn't, of the guy does not come into the summation of 4 amis. But his chelik is, so now you only have to build 3 plus that 1. So again, if you have this wall like this, and here parts of the guy, it's 2 amis, part belongs to the guy, so you don't have to go ahead and go 4 amis this way, count that 1, and go 3 amis that way. That's what you do. 3 amis that way. Avon of eights of afaroi, now you have a collapsed wall from a house of an avodah zarah. So the stones, the wood, and the shmutz, the dirt, mitamoyin kesheretz. It's mitama tumas sheretz, meaning it's only mitama tumas maga. It's a tumah de rabbanon. That is mitama tumas maga. Shenemar shaketz tishakshenu. Should treat it like a sheretz. Anida, both the sheretz and anida are navatuma. But the tumas nida, guys, is not only mitama b'maga, touching, it also mitama b'masa, carrying. So the key is being machmir, that the avon of the eights of afara of an avodah zarah will be mitama tumas nida as well. Shneimar tizrin kamay dava. Dava is a nida. Say right. Say time aloi. That's the pasuk. Ma nida mitama b'masa. Af avodas kachavim mitama b'masa. Okay, so now comes like this. If your wall was over here next to avodah zarah and you recess 4. Avodah zarah is gaining 4 amis that didn't belong to him. So the Gemara, the zarah is being that 4 amis is going to make into a latrine. The Gemara avoids the usa. Says the Avilay Besakisa Delilah. It's only a nighttime latrine. I've Amar Ezet Snua Anifna Balayla Bimakam Shnitz of a Yoim. Right. The Afa got the Mina even though he's that sign that's speaking about the way you go to a bathroom. So L'chaira, what are you talking about? It can't be, even though it's a nighttime bathroom, it's not acceptable. Says why it's a kiddie bathroom. Okay. Bottom line is the guy's not using it. Inami or else. Inami the godale behismi behigni. You know what you did? You put in the barbed wire, you put in thorns, you put in, and it's. You're making it a place where the guy can't use it, either because it's a latrine, or because for the kids, or because there's thorns and thistles there. Shloisha Batamhei. There are 3 houses. Rashi says le'inyan bittul avodas kachavim. There are 3 houses le'inyan bittul avodas kachavim. Bayis shebanu metchila avodas kachavim. Harizah, a house that was built initially for avodah zarah, and they serve the house itself. That is asur. Sayid v'kidoy la'avodas kachavim, right? Let's say the house was built fine, and then Rashi says shahaya bayis banui l'diras adam is built for a person. V'yektseu la'avodas kachavim, and then they set aside a part for avodah zarah. V'tachu b'sid, and they smeared lime on it. V'asabait siurim, and they made pictures l'avodas kechavim. So now says says the Mishnah. So also side of the kaid of kechavim, the chidush, noitel mashachidush. Take whatever. If a Jew wants to mevatel it, all he has to do is take away. I'm good. Let's see Rashi. Saida v'kaida, you went ahead, you smeared lime on it, v'kaida, and you drew into it for by the Zorah, right? Noitel mashachidish. In Ba Yisrael levatloi, noitel mashachidish. You take away whatever was drawn. Umuta habayis, because they didn't serve the house, they only served those pictures. Even if a guy wasn't mevatel it. Afilu ha'is shel Yisrael mumar. Sheina by the kechavim shalei bitela. Hachabato. Sheinesar el chidish v'hu chidish b'ishbato. Sorry, Gishmak, guys. So in other words, the house wasn't served as an avodah zarah. They smeared it and they served. Whatever they served as avodah zarah, if you take away, you don't need bittul. You took it away; it's not there. So case number one is the house they served avodah zarah in. Case number two is where they smeared the walls with and put pictures on it. If you take away those pictures, it's okay. Again, these are three cases of linyan bittul. So one that was served as avodah zarah, you can't be mevatel it. A Jew can't be mevatel it. A guy could be. Sai v'kaida, a Jew can just take it away. And the third case is hiknas the sleicha avodas kechavim. You bring an avodah zarah into the house. V'haitzi arizem muta. That will be muta as long as you take it out. Amar Rav, Hamashlach v'lebayis asrei. Someone who bows down to a house itself asks it. Alma kasava. No, it wasn't built l'shem avodah zarah. Guys, over here it wasn't built l'shem avodah zarah. You built it normally, and then you bow down to it. It becomes asa. The first case of our Mishnah was a house that was built l'shem avodah zarah. That was the case number one. Here's a house that was built as a regular house and then served as an avodah zarah. So I'm a Rav Hamashtach v'lebayis asrei. Alma kasava talish, something that was disconnected, bricks. So the seif chibroy, in the end you made it attached. Kitalish tami, it's like talish. I vanan banu tanan. We learned that only if you build it, not l'shem avodah zarah, not if you built it normally. Rabbi is saying that you build it normally and you serve it. It's mashma only if you built l'shem avodah zarah is rasa, right? So the Gemara answers, banu if it was built of avodah zarah, it's also even if you didn't serve it. If you bow down to it, banu, even if you didn't, So if you built l'shem avodah zarah, aser. If you built it as a house and then serve it, so the house that you built l'shem avodah zarah, even if you didn't do it, no, it's a brand new. Let's say a church. If you hold a church as avodah zarah, a brand new church will be aser. However, if you build these storefronts, you see in Brooklyn these storefronts that become churches, right? You drive down the streets in these bad neighborhoods. So that wasn't built l'shem avodah zarah. It's only when they serve avodah zarah there. You have an additional one. We only have a case that was built as avodah zarah. Now you have additional one that was built l'shem house. It says since the inyan bittul built as an avodah zarah or served as avodah zarah, the bittul is the same. It's considered what? One case. So the word bittul is speaking what? About two different cases. Look at Rashi. Then bittul bana v'shtachava chad chashavlei. The bein bana bein hishtachava kuli asa. Whether you built it or bow down to it, it's asa. It's not shaykh bittul at all. It's not shaykh what bittul at all. Okay, the final Mishnah is shloisha avanim hein even shechatzu mitchila lebimus. You used it initially to be the base of an avodah zarah, and they served it as an avodah zarah. Harizur surah sayid v'kayid l'shem avodas kechavim, or a case where you have a stone. And the stone itself wasn't served, but you went ahead and similar to the house where you plastered it and you drew pictures on it. Noitel masha b'sid v'kayit mutaris. The mamish same halacha, right? You take away whatever was there, and it's going to be good. Hemed Allah by this kechavim b'silka. If you put on top of this some type of pedestal, you put avodah zarah on top of it. Arizem mutaris. So this Mishnah mirrors the previous Mishnah. The three cases of those stones mirrors the case of the house. a stone that was an Avodah Zorah, similar to a house that was Avodah Zorah, a stone that wasn't an Avodah Zorah, but the paintings on it was similar to the house. And the third thing is what is the pedestal is like the house that has nothing on it. You put the Avodah Zorah on the pedestal, you put the Avodah Zorah in the house. Same halacha. Rav Ami, in the case number 2, it's got to be where in the house it wasn't on top of the stone, it had to be chritzt into the stone, right? In other words, if you're going to compare the cases, by the house it was on the wall, it wasn't chritzt in. So why does that be chritzt in? Kenny, chritzt in, you're good with that? Right? Good. As long if Kenny's understanding it, that's a parameter. Chritzt in. So if you have the house is on a level, it's not engraved in, it's not scratched in. So why does the stone have to be scratched in, right? On that, the Gemara says no, it's the truth, right? But bias nami ikka beini urvi. The bias itself, you have beini urvi. You have what? You have between the bricks. I guess between the bricks that area between the bricks is what is chritzt in, and right, and therefore, if you go ahead and you put it over there, right, it's going to be a problem, right? It's going to be so. Therefore, the case of Evan is similar to the case of the house, because the house being the urvia between the bricks, so it's engraved in, it's scratched in. So then over here, the Gemara, Milo Yaskinon, can not the house be speaking the Shia V'Hoda Shiaya? The house was speaking about where it was leveled off, and not, in other words. So therefore, what's your raya? If the house could be leveled, it doesn't have to be engraved. So why does the rock have to be, graved, scratched in? Ella kiyat mad Ravami. Ravami's din that it has to be scratched in is le'inyan bittul itmar. It's speaking what le'inyan bittul. You have to, when it says to take away, right? The Kamashal Ravami, the Afagav the Sai v'Kayed b'Guf Shalevin, even it. In other words, even if it's in the rock itself, kinato mashachidish shapedami. If you take even, in other words, you might view, since it's scratched into the stone, you might view it what as it's not possibly mavatal it. Kamash Malon, if you get rid of that, Kamash Malon, if you get rid of that, it would be mavatal. The tema kivin the side the kaya beguf shaleven ke'even shechatza mitchila by this damya. You might think that once it's in, guys, the first case, you had a stone that served as an Avodah Zarah, asa. Good. So you might think this stone that you scratched it in is taking that out is not enough. I might think since you scratched it in, it itself becomes a piece of Avodah Zarah and it's asa. Kemash Malon, if you take that out, it would be what? It would be asa. Kemash Malon, it would be mevatel. I do not have a Tehillim up here. 1 second, I might have one. Hang on a second. Let me see.